السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمد ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So for those of you who are joining us after a little time, we are going into the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, and you two were here last week. We are at the stage of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. So we heard about the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, the Kingdom of Yemen, all of the things that were going around Hijaz. And I shared that throughout the series to set up a stage so you can understand what was going on around the Arabian Peninsula. Then I talked about how Ibrahim a.s. migration led to the establishment of the city of Mecca, and then how Ismail a.s. took over the leadership in Mecca. His children then took over the affairs of Mecca. There was another tribe that moved. Anyways, the lineage of Ismail a.s. started, all of the different persons of importance in his lineage, and we went down through the ancestry of the Prophet ﷺ, starting with his great-great-grandfather, great-grandfather, grandfather, father. And in the 2 sessions ago, we heard that the Prophet ﷺ lost his father either when he was in his mom's womb or shortly thereafter. Shortly thereafter. In either scenario, the Prophet ﷺ did not have the shade of his father at all or for very long. Amina, she was the single caretaker for the Prophet ﷺ. And just to give you a little recap of last week's, there was a custom in the elite of Quraysh that whenever they would have children, they would send their children outside of the city of Mecca into the deserts, if even, or into certain villages, so that they can be nursed by the women of these areas. And I shared with you the different wisdoms and what was the thought process behind this. This was actually considered a luxury. This is not that they could not afford to, so they sent them out. This was a luxury that only the elite in Quraysh would be accustomed of. Not everyone did this. And amongst the wisdoms was so that they can stay away from the hustle and bustle of a main city like Mecca. The immortality rate was very high for infants. So to save them from dying early, to get them away from places of a lot of traffic, they were sent to the villages. And then also so they can grow up in that environment so that they can become tough. Because remember, Quraysh was like the royal family. Alright? Quraysh was like the royal family. So the children who are a part of the leadership, they don't go to the same process of grooming as everyone else or the same schools. They go through a special grooming process so that they can grow up tough, to be leaders, to be able to handle any type of situation. They did not want to spoil their kids. That's why they would keep their kids away from everything. And then language was also very important. Okay? The city of Mecca having a lot of travelers going in and out, we tend to exchange each other's food, each other's culture, and also each other's vocabulary and language. Like, for example, what's up? That is not the formal way to address someone. Okay? So when you're part of this, diverse setting, you're going to pick up on different things that are not a part of the classical or classical language. So they wanted their kids to grow up. Now, where the Prophet ﷺ ended up, that village was particularly known for its eloquence. It was particularly known for the preservation of the true Arabic language. There were 4 women who nursed the Prophet ﷺ apart from his mother. Okay? And one of those people was a person by the name of Halima. Okay? And this is where we left off last week. Okay? The 4th person that the Prophet ﷺ was fostered by was a person by the name of Halima. she set out, now in order to feed another child, you have to have another child in order for lactation. Okay? So what happened was that she went to Medina. She was so destitute and the situation was so bad that her family was going through severe poverty, severe hunger. And their animal was also suffering from malnutrition. So on the way to on the way to Mecca, she fell behind the rest of the group because her donkey was slow. She only had a 4-cylinder. And that was barely pushing it. Right? By the time she got to Mecca, all of the babies were reserved. And the only baby that was left was this yatim orphan. And initially Halima hesitated because if I get an orphan's kid, that's not where the money is. The money is not going to be with the orphan's kid. The money is going to be with the kid whose father has money. Right? The situation was a little different as far as inheritance and who would take care of the wife afterwards. But she took the Prophet ﷺ hesitantly because she did not want to go back to her village empty-handed. To make the trip worth it. Okay? To make the trip worth it, she took the Prophet ﷺ back. As soon as she picked up the Prophet ﷺ, her chest became full of milk. The Prophet ﷺ was nourished. Her son also drank to his full. And they had never, it was one of the best nights that she experienced because the kids they were always dealing with hunger and the kid crying. And not only that, but when she went to the camp, she brought a donkey and a camel with her during this journey. And the husband also came. So, just to give you a little recap, when she came back to her camp, the camel was also on, the needle was on full. The husband, the other daughter, they all drank to their full and they slept wonderful. And then on the way back, that donkey that had a misfire, now it's running on 8 cylinders. And it passed the pack. And then the other women are like, oh, daughter of this and this tribe, is that the same? Like, did you trade in your donkey? Right? Did you trade it in? Is that the same donkey? So she realized that there is something special about this orphan. And Halima's husband, when first Halima expressed her dissatisfaction on getting the orphan, the husband said, let's keep him, maybe we will be blessed through him. When Halima came back to her village, they noticed that all of her other cattle, the animals, all of her goats, and all of her lambs, the sheep, all of the animals started becoming plump and they started giving milk. And they were going through drought. So what the other neighbors would tell their shepherds, take our animals to where? There used to be shepherds. So there used to be people who would come and take your sheep. Like, you know how people, they take a dog for, they're walking with 10 dogs. They're not their own dogs. They are walking them. So a shepherd would take your goats or your cattle to graze. So they would tell them that take our animals to wherever Halima's animals are grazing from. Subhanallah. And they would still come back empty. But Halima's animals were all on full. So subhanallah, she was blessed. Now, this nursing goes on for 2 years. So after 2 years, they bring back the children to Mecca, where the mothers can meet. And obviously our assumption is that during this time, the parents go visit the child. The parent in this situation, Amina. And now, after this, it becomes optional. That do they want their child to continue to live out there? So Halima kept on saying that, oh, my son. She used to refer to baby Muhammad as her son. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That, oh, I don't want to leave my son here because he might get sick or he might get exposed to all of these evil things. Let my son stay with me. Subhanallah. So he went back with Halima. A few months after this, there was a certain incident that happened. Okay, so first of all, there was a certain incident that happened a few weeks later in which one of the Prophet ﷺ's childhood buddies, he came and ran to Halima and her husband and said that our Qurayshi brother has been attacked. Two people came and threw him on the ground and they started cutting him open. Now, when Halima and her husband got up, they came to the Prophet ﷺ and he was standing there and he was pale. And they Halima asked, "Oh my son, what happened to you?" So the Prophet ﷺ, he explained, "Ja'ani rajulan alayhima thiyabun bid." Two men wearing white clothes came. فَأَضْجَعَانِ وَشَقَّ بَطْنِي. They laid me down. They made an incision on my stomach. They started looking for something. لَا أَدْرِ مَا هُوَ. I don't know what they were looking for. And then I was stitched up and they left. So Halima, she said that she thought that he was possessed by some type of evil. So now Halima quickly, before anything else happens to baby Muhammad ﷺ, she quickly rushed back and presented the Prophet ﷺ back to Amina. And she said, "Oh, you know what, I think he's fulfilled his time with us and we've enjoyed it. I think that, we're having so much fun. You shouldn't miss out on it. Here, keep him." So Amina said that, "Whoa, just a few weeks ago you were making these 100 excuses to take him back, and now all of a sudden you want to leave him? You're in such a hurry to leave him?" So Halima insisted that there was nothing wrong. But Amina kept on persisting. "Tell me the reason, tell me the reason." And then Halima explained that this is what happened with your baby. And she thinks that the shaitan has possessed him. When Amina heard this, she said, "Kalla. No. It can never be shaitan. مَا لِلشَّيْطَانِ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ سَبِيلٍ. There is no way shaitan can have his way with my baby. وَإِنَّ لِبُنَيَّ لَشَأْنًا. My dear son, he is very special. Let me tell you something." Halima said, "Yes, do tell me." She explains, رَأَيْتُ حِينَ حَمَلْتُ بِهِ أَنَّهُ خَرَجَ مِنِّي نُورٌ أَضَاءَ قُصُورَ بُصْرَى. Busra is an area in Syria, not Basra in Iraq. This is Busra. Busra is an area in Syria. Amina says that when I was pregnant, when I was bearing my baby, there was a light that was emitting from my stomach that illuminated the palaces in Busra. And then she said that when I gave birth to him, he was on his hands. وَاضِعٌ يَدَيْهِ بِالْأَرْضِ. He had his hands on the earth. رَافِعٌ رَأْسَهُ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ. With his head up in the sky. And then she said, and then she told Halima that leave him here and go. That's fine. So basically what you train a child for tummy time. The Prophet ﷺ was healthy physically as a baby, as Halima mentioned. And also she explained that there is something special. He cannot be possessed. And this meaning of this phrase, this is also something that the Prophet ﷺ also said in his own words. It is in Sahih Muslim that the Prophet ﷺ was asked, "Ya Rasulullah, akhbirna an nafsik." Tell us a little bit about yourself. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ana da'watu Abi Ibrahim." I am the acceptance of the prayer that Ibrahim a.s. made. When Ibrahim a.s. turned around and he made dua and said, "Oh Allah, send someone amongst them who will teach them," the Prophet ﷺ, وَأَنَا بُشْرَى أَخِي Isa. I am the glad tidings of my brother Isa. In where Isa a.s. is quoted in the Quran, he is quoted as to have telling his people that I give you the glad tidings of a person who will come after me. Ismuhu Ahmad. Then he says, وَرَأَتْ أُمِّي, and my mom saw when she was bearing me that this radiant light was illuminating the palaces of Busra, and I have been fostered by the people of Banu Sa'd ibn Bakr, which is the Qabila of Halima. And then he explains that once I was behind the house playing with the goats, and two people came, and they came with a golden bowl, mamlu'atin thalja, that had ice in it. They grabbed me, they made an incision on my stomach, they took out my heart. فَشَقَّاهُ, they opened my heart, فَاسْتَخْرَجَا مِنْهُ عَلَقَةً سَوْدَاء فَطَرَحَهَا. They took out this dark sliver, like a clot, and then they threw it out. ثُمَّ غَسَلَ قَلْبِي وَبَطْنِي بِذَلِكَ الثَّلْجِ. Then they washed my heart and my stomach with that ice, حَتَّى أَنْقَيَاهُ, until they cleaned it up. And then the Prophet ﷺ extends and talks about the conversation that these two people in white who were angels had in regards to the Prophet ﷺ. There's another narration in Sahih Muslim by Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, in which the Prophet ﷺ says that there was a golden bowl, and in that golden bowl was water, the water of Zamzam. And his heart was washed out with that, and then it was put back into his chest. Then Anas radiallahu anhu says, وَقَدْ كُنْتُ أَرَى أَثَرَ ذَلِكَ الْمِخْيَطَ فِي صَدْرِ. I could see the marks, al-mikhyat, of the suturing. I could see the marks of that incision and the suturing on the chest of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, this is a particular, and this happened another time as well. The story or an event having to do with an incision on the Prophet ﷺ, this happened twice. Once was now, as he was in the village of Halima, and one was the next time? Before Isra. Okay? After Isra, before Mi'raj. Okay? Before Isra. Before he started the entire journey. This is something else that happened to the Prophet ﷺ. This had a different purpose and that had a different purpose. And to understand this, why this happened, I'm going to share with you a hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, in which the Prophet ﷺ says, مَا مِن مَوْلُودٍ يُولَدُ إِلَّا وَالشَّيْطَانُ يَمَسُّهُ حِينَ يُولَدُ. Whenever any baby is born, Shaitan gets to tap at that child. Okay? He gets in contact with that child. فَيَسْتَحِلُّ صَارِخًا مِنْ مَسِّ الشَّيْطَانِ. The reason a baby cries after birth, the Prophet ﷺ explained, the reason it cries after birth is because of the anguish of having the contact with Shaitan. Now, the Prophet ﷺ said, except for two. There are two human beings who did not have this encounter from day one, or hour one, or minute one. And that was Maryam alayhi salam and her son. And then Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu substantiated this. And then he said to his tabi'i or sahaba, who he was relating this to, so he gave the dalil, and he said, اقرأوا إن شئتم, read in the Quran if you want, وإني أعيذها بك وذريتها من الشيطان الرجيم. When the angels came to give the glad tidings of Maryam alayha salam to who? So glad tidings of Isa alayhi salam was given to Maryam alayha salam. And the glad tidings of Maryam alayha salam was given to who? Imran alayhi salam. He wanted to have a child, a son, who he could designate to the services of Masjidul Aqsa. But he did not have a boy. He had a girl. And that girl is Maryam alayhi salam. So at that time, when Imran alayhi salam's dua was answered, Jibreel alayhi salam said that he is under that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I will protect her wa dhurriyataha, and her child, from shaitan al-rajim. Anyways, so because shaitan has this long war against insan, he makes sure that as soon as a baby is born, that baby recognizes and identifies who's his enemy. Right? Like if someone wants to intimidate someone, first day kid goes to school, right? And this guy comes and pushes that kid around. Hey, remember this face. This is my name. Remember who I am. You're not going to see me every day. You may not see me for a while, but when you see me, you better recognize. So shaitan has this contact with the baby to let that baby know that I am the one that you are going to be dealing with. Now, this does not imply that somehow shaitan has control over the entire human race. But shaitan tries to have some type of influence. Shaitan tries to bring things in front of a person that may incline them towards shaitan or towards sin. Now, when it came to the Prophet ﷺ, this event serves for the purpose that now, after this event, the shaitan cannot influence the Prophet ﷺ's actions. He cannot. And this is where the concept, which is a part of our aqidah, which is called the isma of the anbiya, where the prophets are ma'soom. The word ma'soom means they do not have the capacity to sin and to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unintentionally, let alone intentionally. They cannot. They cannot. And not even if they wanted to, they can't even want that, to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They cannot make an azam of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They cannot. And this serves to present the fact that the prophets have to be meticulous and impeccable in order for their message. In other words, in order for a prophet's message to be accepted without any excuse, that prophet cannot have a rap sheet. That prophet cannot have any history or any baggage at all. And in the Quran, wherever there are events or instances that referred to a prophet doing something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reprimanded them on, we, in the Sunni Aqidah, we view all of those things to be a matter of mistake, accident, or even misjudgment. This is our Aqidah, where we look for the answer, not necessarily an excuse, but we give an explanation for why they did whatever they did. And not that it was for the intention of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but for example, Adam alayhi salam, when he ate from the fruit, it wasn't to intentionally disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the only command.